Hey guys, I'm back in my car. I'm actually on the road. I was headed somewhere in the last car video when I introduced things, and now I'm on the way back home. So here's what I want to talk about in this video. I've told you a little bit about my car interest and how why I want a car and why I've liked cars. And so now I kind of want to tell you a little bit more about what I'd like to do in the future and what I've also driven. So I'm going to start with what I'd like to do in the future. So if you've been following up with other videos, you know not only am I a car person, but I've worked with finances, and that's something that I'm very much into. So having a plan to buy a sports car is certainly in my mind, right? And I've got to think financially, how can I make it happen? And then financially, what can I actually get myself to afford? So there's two things I'm looking for. Really, I'm looking for a truck, and I've already picked out what I want in my truck. I'm going to get an F-150 Raptor. To me, those have always been high quality trucks. You can do a lot off-road. They're very practical vehicles. I mean, gas mileage, maybe not so much, but as far as the space that you get in those and the performance you get out of them and what you can do off-road with them, it really draws my interest quite a bit. And so an F-150 Raptor will be my truck. That'll probably, it's hard to say whether or not it'll be my daily driver. But then the next car I get, I'm thinking like a GT car maybe. You know, there's a lot of people who can debate what a GT car may or may not be, but something that I can drive on a daily basis if I wanted to. I'm thinking maybe along the lines of a Porsche 911. I don't know. That's just a thought. I've driven a couple of those and really have enjoyed getting to drive them. There were a couple of different opportunities in my life. Another thing that I will one day like to get is go even above and beyond the Porsche and, you know, maybe venture out into the Italian exotics. You know, right now in this time, I think of people like vehicle versions, right? So Parker Nierenstein, however you want to pronounce it, has some pretty cool cars, right? He's got an S550. If he's still got it, he's probably gotten rid of it by now. He just bought another S-Class, like S63, I think. I forget what it's called exactly. I've, haven't paid as much attention. And then, of course, my personal favorite, he's got the Lamborghini, not the Gallardo. Wow, I'm starting to age out a little bit. The Lamborghini Huracan, and I'm a huge Lamborghini fan. Generally, I'd stick to a Ferrari, just because I've driven one, I've experienced one. But you know, if the Huracan isn't such a bad option, or whenever the time comes for me to get one, if the equivalent is just as good as Parker seems to make the Huracan to be, hey, you never know, I might just would get a Lamborghini instead. But and in this whole channel, I'm not necessarily in it for the money, especially right now. I'm just starting out. But it would be cool to have a YouTube driven car, just to say, hey, you guys help me get to where I'm at, and that's something I'd like to do. And it's going to take time, and eventually I'll have to get nicer cameras, and then I'll have to update my equipment, and I'll actually get into real editing. And who knows, maybe one day I won't actually have to have a day job to be able to do this. So right now I'm kind of blitzing on the YouTube videos and just kind of getting some content out there. I really do want to start doing this on a regular basis and just trying it, and really experiencing what it's like to be a YouTuber full time. So I'll tell you where I'm at right now. Right now I've got my Pilot, and sooner or later I'm going to show you my wife's Camry. Maybe later, I can't say for sure when, but I'll actually give you a real walk around tour. Now, I do want to go over a lot of things about this car. It's kind of nice just to be able to do like an actual car review. I've never been able to do one of those, but in time I'll be able to actually put something like that together, and we'll be able to do some video collages and just trying to do things of interest. So that's really it for this video. I'm going to go into a little bit more about I told you I'd talk about the cars that I'd like to have down the road, and I do want to tell you a little bit about my car experiences too. So some of the experiences I've had. I'm 23 currently. I am a car fanatic, as if I haven't told you enough. And here's kind of where my interest has gotten me. So of course I told you in the last video about my dad's coworker that had the Dodge Viper, and getting to drive that was the big pivotal moment in my life when I started liking cars. Okay, so I've driven the Viper many, many, many times. In fact, I'm actually right now where I'm driving, I'm not that far from the guy's house. In fact, even I'll pass another guy who currently has a Dodge Viper. I'll pass his house as well. There's a lot of Vipers where I'm at, and a lot of older Vipers. I love it. I love the old design of the Viper. So got to drive that quite a bit. Then as a senior in high school, I was privileged to be able to drive a Corvette C6, and at the time that was a relatively new Corvette. That wasn't like right now where they're talking about the C7s and possibly now even getting the mid-engine Corvette next year. But at that time the C6 was a pretty sweet thing. So I got to drive that. The day that I got my license was probably the most interesting experience. I was given the keys to a Porsche 911, and I had about an hour and a half or 2 hours where I just got the free ride. I could drive it wherever I wanted. There was a dentist in our local area who really kept Porsches, not as a collection necessarily, but at the time he had 3. He had 2 911s and he had a Boxster. And I've seen him also with the Boxster Spider. I've seen him with the Cayenne. So I know he's a Porsche fanatic. He's had many, many Porsches over the years. I don't know what he even has now. It's been a long time since I've seen him or talked to him. But definitely a Porsche guy. And he was just really generous. When I turned 16, he let me drive his Porsche just randomly, and hey, it was pretty cool. He let me go out for a couple hours in it and have some fun, and take one of my best friends out for a ride. So that's what I got to do. Now another experience I've had with Porsches is I do have a family member, distant in marriage, who is a general manager at a car dealership. And he just happened to stumble upon a Porsche 911. It was a 2013 model. The first one I drove was a 2005. So he had a 2013 Porsche 911, and I got to drive that. Only a couple miles down the road. It wasn't a huge test drive like the first one, but nonetheless, I got to drive this Porsche, and it was an awesome experience. Fell in love with Porsches. And then also there was a personal friend of mine back in high school whose parents got an early 2000s Boxster. And this Porsche at the time, it was probably worth 10 grand or less. It wasn't a very expensive car at that point. Maybe to maintain it, but to buy it, no. And obviously worth much less probably even now. And it was a Boxster. I was able to drive that a few times around the block just to get the feel for it. So I've driven 3 different Porsches. Now the biggest story of my life was back in 2014. It was in May. I just finished up my first year of college, and we would go to the mountains generally every couple of years for a family vacation, and on the way to the mountains we would stop by our local Ferrari dealership, because the nearest Ferrari dealership's a few hours from here. And there was a friend that I had that worked there, and of course you can't just test drive a Ferrari, okay? You got to have some serious bank, or you got to be a serious customer to be able to get into one of those. But I'd been knowing this guy for years and years and years, and finally he was able to work it out and got permission to let me ride the Ferrari. And then shortly thereafter, on that same little test drive, he started talking to me and started saying, hey, why don't you take us back? And I was 19 years old, and I got to drive a 2013 Ferrari California. And that was the coolest driving experience of my life. One of the best cars I've ever driven by far. That exceeds the Viper, that exceeds the Porsches, just because that car is so well refined and so well built that it took the road so well. And I only got to drive it a couple miles. It wasn't like I was putting 30, 40 miles on the car, but my goodness, I'd never in my life driven such an amazing car. And so that's why I kind of have that bias towards getting like a Ferrari as opposed to a Lamborghini. But someday if this channel actually gets anywhere, and if I'm able to make money off of YouTube, that's not necessarily the goal or the major lifelong dream here, but hey, if it takes me there, why not? And hey, if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. So that's kind of my experiences with cars, and hopefully in the future we can look at some reviews. The next thing I want to maybe go over, this is just going to be brief, maybe some things for the future. If you have any questions about cars, if you ever have questions about finances, please feel free to get in contact with me. Another thing, I happen to have some contacts at our local Ford dealerships. Now, I'd like to review some cars, maybe just kind of let individuals be able to see what the cars are like, and maybe I can do some reviews. Maybe I can do a Mustang once. Maybe I can do some of the other cars. Maybe I can get an F-150 in there. And I'll do the best I can do. I can't necessarily do a Raptor or a Shelby. The dealership in our town is really protective over those cars, and of course I wouldn't expect them to be any different about it with somebody coming in to do a review. I can probably get into an F-150, I can probably get into a Mustang, and I can probably get into any other car. Now, this is a dealership I used to work for, so that does help me get into the door a little bit, but that is a timely matter, and we'll have to see how that goes. But really, at this point, that's all I have for you today. Y'all have a good one. Thank you.